All right, it's another episode of the RSL Random Fan Podcast. We have a very special guest this evening, John Kimball, the president of Real Salt Lake. He's joining myself and Tyler and Brennan. John, thank you for joining us.
Hey, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
We're glad to have you. It's really exciting to have someone as important as you on our little podcast. One of the things that I ask a question that annoys the other two, but I like to ask and get it out of the way. Are you a soccer fan, John?
I am now.
Are you a convert like myself? Brennan and Tyler grew up loving the game, but I myself am a convert to soccer. I came around when Brennan started playing a long time ago, but I converted to the game. How about yourself?
So I grew up playing. I played for East High School. I also played hockey, and all the hockey players played soccer. And so one day they said, "Hey, do you want to come play soccer?" And I said, "Can I hit people?" And they said, "You can if you play goalie." And so I said, okay, I'll play goalie. So I went out and played for East High School. I also played rugby for Highland High School and loved the contact sports mostly, but I did love playing soccer. And I would say, it wasn't until I started working for Dave Checketts. I was arguably the first employee of Real Salt Lake way back when Dave Checketts started the club. I was working for Dave Checketts in another company that he owned. And then he said, I'm going to buy a soccer team. So I, fell into working with him from there. And I absolutely fell in love with the game. And it truly is the beautiful game. The only issue I have with the game is the flopping. And it has no place in the game. And I joke all the time, if you did that in rugby, your own players would slap you across the face. So that's my only issue with the beautiful game is when people pretend like they're injured and flop around and waste time. I just don't think it belongs. So that's my only issue.
So what were you doing working for Dave? You were working in a different capacity, and all of a sudden he's like, "John, you're pretty presidential. You should probably be the president of my soccer team." How'd that come about?
Well, I at that point we were working for a company called Sports West, and we were doing the TV broadcasting for the Mountain West Conference and the WAC Conference. And then he said he was going to buy the team. He wanted me to kind of do a business role, which was overseeing sponsorship and a couple other things. And so that's where I started, my career. Really not in sports because I worked for KSL for a number of years and then ran their sports division when they had BYU as one of their affiliations. And we had a bunch of other affiliations with NFL and other stuff that we were broadcasting. But yeah, I was working for Sports West, and then Dave, interesting story. The NBA asked Dave to go to Real Madrid to take the NBA to Real Madrid because Real Madrid was interested in an NBA team. When he went there, he saw the facilities and was so impressed with what they do with soccer that he came back and in New York City walked down the street to the MLS and yep, and told Don Garber, I want to buy a team. I want to take a team to my hometown. And that's where the whole thing started. And that's why our name is what it is. And there was a history there. We had a home and away arrangement with Real Madrid in the beginning. That's why we played Real Madrid when David Beckham came over and had a really interesting relationship. And unfortunately, that president of Real Madrid was fired, and so that relationship went away. But that's where all of that history kind of came from.
And then they just recently outbid Real Salt Lake for Kylian Mbappe, I saw. Is that
Yeah,
true?
just barely.
Just barely, just by a little
Comfortably.
bit. We were in the running there. Yeah.
Well, you win the Champions League 7 out of, I don't know, 10 years or whatever it is, and they just kind of rule Europe, you know?
That's right. That's right. No.
So
So yeah.
I had a question going back to the early days. What was it like in the nascent days of RSL and the difference between what it was like in 2003 when you were hired, 4 or 5, and when the team was started compared to now? It night and day has to be, right?
I mean, the thing that I'm trying to really um focus on now is the culture that we had then. And the culture that we had then was everybody was doing everything. Everybody was tearing down banners, everybody was showing up and, making sure that everything got done. Back in those days, the team would come out post game and sign autographs. We'd have lines of hundreds of people, and the players would sit there for hours and sign autographs. And it was just everybody was doing the lifting across the team, across the players, across the coaches. Post game, we used to go down to a restaurant and eat together. And that was one of my main goals when I came back 3 years ago, was to try to recreate that culture. I had a number of employees that worked with us then that have said, I've never worked at a place that I loved more than working for Real Salt Lake. And I want to come back and I want to have that, belonging, that family feeling and that culture that we've had in the past. And I think we're doing a good job. We're getting there. But things are different. Players are paid differently. It is a little bit different than it was then, but that really led to what I think culminated in a national championship with our head coach Jason Kreis and Nick and Kyle and Javi and all those guys that helped us win that trophy.
That was one of the things that really drew me in. I was at the first game. I know Tyler was as well. I was making hot dogs for my daughter's drill team.
Mm-hmm.
One of the booths there. But we started going as a family, and that was one of the things I found so impressive is that you were so close to the team and the players, and it was at the beginning of something. There was 8 teams when RSL came into the league, and I remember thinking, it's like, man, this isn't gonna last. At some point, we're still nowhere near, NBA, NFL. I'm sure that's where any league wants to get that kind of stature, but it is still an opportunity for people to get close to a club, especially if when a club has an attitude like Real Salt Lake.
Yeah, no, it was really special back in those days, and I'm still very close. I went to lunch with Nick Romano today, and we're good friends. And having Jason Kreis come back, and someday I'd love to get Kyle Beckerman to come work with us. And it was a special time, a special group of people. And with that kind of feeling, you can do just about anything. And we're getting that feeling again. That's why I'm really bullish about how this team is playing now and what our chances are over the next couple of years.
Well,
Before
How
we
John,
get
excited are you for this year? Sorry to interrupt.
go ahead. Sorry.
Well, how excited are you for this year? Do you think that the momentum that's being built right now is going to carry us pretty far? Like, what are your expectations for the year?
I try not to get too high or too low, because you can jinx yourself. And but I'll tell you, the coaching staff, the players, the club has done all the work that we need to do to be a championship team. And while we might have some rough games here in the second half of the year, the confidence is there. We need the fan base to be there. I mean, before I go any further, there's one thing I need you guys to do, and I need you guys to help us. We got to vote for our players for All-Star. I need every fan that listens to this and every fan that you guys can reach out to 10 times a day vote for our players, because nobody else is going to vote for them. And we're one of the smallest teams in the league when it comes to market size. And they always want the big markets to win and the big names to win. but we've got the best players in the league, and we're proving that game in and game out with with 13 games at this point. And we just need our fans to step up and vote for our players, because, you know, guys like Emeka and others, they deserve to be on that all-star team. They're as good or better than anybody else in this league, and they show it every single week. And we need our fan base to step up and support our players and do their part to show that we're behind these guys. But yeah, I'm very bullish about who we are right now, and I'm very bullish for the next couple of years, because not only are we deep, we're wide. We've got young players that we're playing consistently. Gavin Beavers, he's getting better every single game. Every single game, his footwork is getting better. He is going to be a wicked, awesome goaltender. And, you just go down the list with all the players that we're giving time. You saw Gozo get in at the end of the game. I mean, these guys are going to be good because we're giving them first team experience. And, that's how you create that depth that is going to really, help us in the long run of a long season and into the playoffs.
Are you giving Beavers as much input and expertise from your goalie days playing in taking Kids of
he,
Fives?
he won't listen to anything I got to say. I just would take people out. So they come near me, they're going down. So
How to get
he's
a how to
probably,
get a yellow card?
yeah, he's got to be a little bit more careful. There's more people watching him.
So, what
Hey,
is
well,
the? Go ahead, Tyler.
oh yeah, with the everyone in mentality, I was watching pregame as the goalpost wasn't going in right. And was it a matter of the goalpost not going in right, or what was it? And then it ended up being a practice goal that we pulled in. We tell us kind of what happened there.
Yeah, there was just an issue with the hole, and they got to replace it. And the goalpost just wasn't going in and wasn't going to go in correctly. So for timing, we had to replace it with a practice goal so that we could get the game on time. And they've already, I believe, replaced it and got it fixed. But crap happens, and those are the things you just don't know is going to happen. But we've got such a solid team. Our grounds crew team was buttoned up and solved the problem, and then we banged in a bunch of goals, which is what everybody came to see.
Yeah, I was thinking the players. I think we're tweeting to keep the practice goal. Is there a
Yeah,
movement to keep that in place or
we'll
no?
do whatever we got to do. We'll help the team any way we can. I still
Right?
am wearing the same socks and underwear. So,
Well, I mean, there ended up being like 8 guys around the goal trying to help and run, and that's kind of that everyone culture you're talking about, right?
exactly. And that's, there's nobody above anybody. That's what Pablo preaches. That's what Chicho preaches. That's what these guys do, is they're there to support and lift and do what we got to do to make things happen. And that's when something special can happen with a club like this, because you have that mentality where the team is the star, and special things happen.
So, what is the process that has changed, or has it changed in building the team? We had a great run early on through 2007 to 2013. Then things weren't so good until a couple of years, but the last couple of seasons, the you've had incredible um, draft picks. And what was the process of bringing in a player like Chicho? How has it changed in building the club? All is it philosophical, or was there some bigger changes?
I just think it's all an evolution. And to your point, Brant, when you said you became a fan, and we won that national championship and had no business winning that national championship. We qualified in the Eastern Division as a wild card, beat David Beckham's. That was the one thing they left out of the Netflix, story, is they
Yeah.
left out the fact that we, pounded them in that 2009 championship game up in Seattle, which I thought was interesting. They also left out that Real Madrid came to Utah and played that game. So those were the two things they left out of that show. But it's been an evolution because, we showed that we could win. And then, we had, Deloy Hansen step up. He built an amazing practice facility that helped us develop players, and is one of the most amazing training facilities in the northern hemisphere. And then we've got an ownership group now that really leans in. My boss, Scott Crace, is heavily involved every single week. We have weekly meetings with Pablo, Zoom calls where ownership gets on the call and Pablo breaks things down. And it's just created an amazing culture. And they're spending the money. They're investing and doing exactly what they said they would do, to bring a player like Chicho. And then, we had some issues in our locker room last year, and we've done some things to fix that. And Chicho is our captain and our leader. And, it everything's falling into place. And to see them playing as well as they're playing, and I'm not saying, that may last this whole season, but they all believe in each other, and they believe in their coach, and they believe in our ownership, and they believe in our club. They believe in our fan base. And like I said, when that happens, amazing, special things can happen. And so, I think some amazing things are going to happen this year, and I'm just excited to be a part of it.
So how did we end up with Chicho? Because that's probably to date was the biggest signing so far after we had a huge signing with Andres Gomez.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with Kurt Schmidt, and all the hard work he did. Elliot Fall was certainly involved in that when he was our general manager. And again, I give a lot of credit to our ownership for stepping up and listening to, what our soccer ops team had to say. The breakdown was, Chicho left LA because they wouldn't make him a DP, and he went to Mexico and was playing for a team, and then he didn't want to be in Mexico any longer. And we just got lucky. He became available, and our guys did the work to find him and to negotiate. And then our ownership stepped up and believed in what they were saying were the possibilities. And it was timing, and I think just a lot of hard work went into making it happen.
Yeah, we really put that out there to the universe, John, just so you know. We contributed in our own little way. I mean, the
I
week before the signing, we were talking over and over about what person we're missing, what quality this person needs to have. And we're like, okay, they probably need to be Mexican. They probably need to be a striker. And then we were just joking around that we would, what's his name over in the Premier League that is on Fulham now. We're like, yeah, he's definitely on our top of our list. And then we
Yeah.
got Chicho, who's actually turned out probably better than we probably even expected.
Yeah, and it again, for him to go to Mexico and then be unhappy, and I don't want to say he was unhappy, but he just wanted to come back to the United States. It couldn't have happened any other way than the way that it happened, and here he is. And then they've done just an amazing job. I got to give a ton of credit to Kurt Schmidt and his team, Tony Beltran, now Jason Kreis. They did all their homework, and then they built and put players around Chicho that are also threatening, that were hard to find. They weren't, superstars necessarily, but when you put those players all on the field at the same time, you can't not pay attention to Chicho, but you also can't not pay attention to Julio and to Gomez. And I mean, if you do, you're going to get punished. And that's what I think is so exciting about our club is we are scoring with everybody. Everybody is banging goals in. So there isn't one person you can leave alone. I mean, Justin Glad's involved, Vera's involved. We got, I mean, Brody, I mean, his cross to Chicho. I mean, it's just, and then Chicho's assist. I mean, it's one of those teams that we are scary to play. People are terrified to play us because we'll pound you right in the ground and you make a mistake. And I love the soccer we're playing now. The only other thing I dislike about soccer is that whole mentality of getting up and then sitting back and letting an opposing team take 15 shots on you and hoping it doesn't go in. It's kind of what we did in LA. And I'm going to take credit because I went to Jason Kreis and I said, hey, when I played rugby for Larry Gelwicks in Highland High School, we would be up on teams 65-0. And I was a captain on that team. And I would say, hey, coach, do you want to put some other players in? We're comfortably ahead at 65 points. And he'd say, no. He'd say, I want them to remember who you are. I want you to step on their throat. I don't want them to ever forget that they played Highland rugby. And I was like, okay. And then we beat them 85-0. And so I've always had that mentality of why not get up 7 goals? Why get up 2 goals and sit back? It makes no sense to me. So jokingly, I said that to Jason Kreis and said, dude, what are we doing? And ever since then, we've been stepping on people's throats and we are not, playing back. And I just hope that continues. Not that I have anything to do with the success on the field, but I just happen to feel that that's a mentality that I just want people to fear us. I want people to just be terrified when they play us because we're beating people 5-1, 7. I called Saturday's game. I said it's going to be 7-1. It should have been 10-1. They missed what, like 4 goals that should have gone in.
And
I
safe
mean,
going
so
off the
I was not
line.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, it's fun to see them do well. It's fun to see them play aggressive. It's fun to see them play to the last minute and not sit back and be so confident that they know their defense is going to be able to handle any counter attack. And Zach in goal and Gavin in goal. I mean, it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, 17 goal differential. I don't think we've ever been that high. I don't know. I'm not Wiki Trey, but 17 goal differential, that's amazing.
It is. And it's like I said, it is so fun to watch. And I just, I'm super excited. Like I said, I'm careful to not get too high or too low because things can change. We just got to remain healthy and confident. And I think we're going to do some really cool stuff this year.
Well, that was the number one complaint last year was having a lead and essentially bringing out a defender as a sub. And I was like, oh, I hate this
Yeah.
style of play. So thank you for sharing that with the coaches.
Yeah.
Um,
Not that
well,
they listen to me. I thought it was
no,
coincidental that
no, you listen to Presidente. That's what you do.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
He's got words of wisdom, especially Highland. So you were speaking of change. Is there anything change wise in the future that you're excited for, or some of the fans can be excited for, like in the stadium or team or anything like that?
Yeah, our ownership is just really smart about what they want to do and how they want to do it, and I think the league is being very smart about preparing for 2026. I will say that there is a possibility that Messi comes and plays at our home because we had the away game this year. So that's something that I got my fingers crossed on, and we have a better chance having done that than not having done that. So I don't want to say that's a done deal or anywhere near that, but I think it bodes well for us that we did that first game against them in Miami. But then that leads right into 2026. We are excited about working with FIFA and the possibilities of potentially having teams come and be hosted in Utah. And with that, I look at all the other leagues. There's no other league that has the trajectory of what we have going on for us. I'll tell a quick story. I met with FIFA a couple months ago, and I've been preaching that the World Cup is going to be the biggest event in the history of the United States. And I went on with Scotty and Hans, who are 2 football meatheads, and I said, hey, I'm going to make a statement, and I want you to tell me I'm wrong. And they said, well, okay, what are you going to say? And I said, this will be the biggest event in the history of the United States of America. Tell me I'm wrong. And they're like, well, the Super Bowl or the Olympics. I said, nowhere near being as big as what's going to happen at the World Cup. Well, the next week I met with FIFA, and FIFA was saying, hey, we're excited about this. And I made my statement. And the guy stopped me and he corrected me. He said, John, this isn't the biggest thing in the United States. This is the biggest sporting event in the history of the world. He said, there's nothing that is bigger than the World Cup coming to the United States and playing in 11 NFL stadiums. There is no sporting event that is bigger than this event. He said, Qatar was awesome, hard to get to. Before that was Russia. Who's going to go to Russia? And yet, a lot of people went. But you come to the United States of America where you can gather people. We're going to have countries around the world literally infiltrate our country and show why soccer is the biggest sport in the world, why it is the beautiful game, why it is so dominant. And America will just be like freaking out, going, are you kidding me? This is like nothing we've ever seen before. This place will be absolutely going off. And the cool thing about Salt Lake is, I made that comment, and the guy from FIFA said, John, where do you think Argentina stayed when they were in Qatar? And I jokingly said, well, there's a 4 seasons. There's probably a 6 or 8 seasons over there, right? Because all the money. And he laughed. He goes, John, they stayed at a college. They had 2 players per room in a college dorm. They did not want to be seen or go out or do anything. They wanted to eat, sleep, and play soccer and win the World Cup. And they said, that's why Utah is so cool. You have the altitude, you have an amazing airport, you have, different places that I can't really get into that are going to have that same kind of feel. And teams are going to say, we don't want to stay in New York. We don't want to stay in LA. We don't want to stay in Chicago. We want to be in a place where people are going to leave us alone and let us do what we're here to do, which is to try to win the World Cup. So I'm really excited about, all of the different possibilities that brings to our league, our teams, our players. And there's just nothing like it that's happening in any other league right now. So while it's exciting to have hockey come, I'll tell you, there's nothing that's going to light up, the United States of America like the World Cup is.
Now, John, was there a slight hope that we would host a game? We would be a host city. Is there a little bit of an outside chance that that would happen? Or was it never even in the cards?
It never was in the cards. We just don't have a big enough building. They're looking at 60 to 80,000 plus buildings. That's why the NFL stadiums are make the most sense. But again, I think it's even cooler that they're going to stay potentially in our city and then fly out. They're going to, they'll go play in those cities and then come back here. And so, there'll be hopefully opportunities to go see them practice and interact and be in our community. And fingers crossed, will be one of those locations that people are going to think it'd be a cool place to be. And it just speaks volumes about our state, about the sports commission, about our governor and what we're trying to do here in Utah with the Olympics and everything else that we're trying to do.
It's an expanded World Cup too, right? It's the first World Cup with, was it 48 or 46 teams? How many was
36,
32?
48?
I think it's 48. I think they increased it. But theoretically, how many countries could Utah host?
I'm not sure how much I can talk about, but there's at least one. So we're excited about that, and there could even be multiples. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we think with the practice facilities, you could host more than one country, depending on how
Yeah.
many there. It wouldn't be that hard to.
No, I think, with our training facility that, again, it's one of the nicest and most amazing training facilities in North America. It's when David Blitzer came here and saw that, it was one of the things that closed the deal for him, because he's like, he's never seen anything like it. So that's very appealing to all these countries that are going to be looking at the brochure for places to go.
Nice. And they can always hike up to Donut Falls, But
Right.
It's a nice little hike, nice little donut.
Yeah.
Watch
Yeah.
yourself
so
towards the top, right?
you
Right.
brought up David Blitzer. How does
No, it is
how does
it
it
is
work?
48, by the way, Brent. Yeah,
Okay.
you were
Thank
right.
you. Thank you. I
48.
was right. Thank you.
Confirmed.
So how does it all work? We had uh, Mr. Corrado come through the Blitzer group, and then he went to Vancouver and then off to Turkey, I think. So how does it all work with bringing in players? I don't know if we've seen uh, a lot, or maybe we just don't see a lot of how that all works interconnectedly between all of the Blitzer uh, clubs.
Yeah, I would say that we're one of the groups, one of the biggest sports groups that is really effectively trying to utilize their uh, sister, brother, whatever teams you want to call them, that are in within the network. We have a group called GFH, which is Global Football Holdings. There's a gentleman named Scott McLaughlin that oversees that. He works with all those teams in Europe and coordinates with us. He is on our weekly calls, and we're sending players there. They're sending players here, and we're really trying to collaborate and work together to, benefit the clubs that are owned by ownership. And I think we're one of the few groups that's really effectively doing that. There's other teams like Red Bull and other groups that have those type of relationships, but I think we're being the most effective with it. And to your point, there's a number of players that have gone and will go, and you'll even see clubs come over and play us in tournaments and different things. Our youth players are getting a lot of activity and and having amazing opportunities to go around the world and be seen and play and practice at places they'd never get that chance to without our ownership group doing what they're doing.
So I want to
Brandon.
know, so like just for a random fan, what exactly does being a president detail day to day? Like what is it you're doing on a day-to-day basis that makes you such a big deal?
Like I said earlier when we weren't on, I really do think, yeah, I'm the head janitor because I'm just cleaning stuff up. I'm working on culture. I'm working with employees. Um, I work with the coaches. I get the opportunity to interact with players and do fun things. I celebrated Greek Easter with Katranis at a friend of my house, a friend of mine who's Greek, that was excited to have him here. Alex, he's just got an amazing wife, and he wanted to meet the Greek community that's substantial here in Utah, and so my good friend invited us to his home, and it was just a special opportunity to participate with him and see him make those connections and feel better about being here. And you can imagine some of these wives and girlfriends that travel from around the world and how they might feel being here and how do we welcome them as a family. And so I get to do a lot of really cool stuff. And then I also get a lot of, do a lot of really not cool stuff. But it's an honor. It's just an honor. I literally have to pinch myself daily to wake myself up that this isn't a dream, and it's just been amazing to work with our ownership group. I was a part of. I mean, the story is kind of crazy. I was working for the Utah Jazz after I left Real Salt Lake. You know, I don't know how many years ago, 6, 8 years ago. I worked for the Jazz for a number of years. And I got a phone call from Deloy Hansen, and he said, "John, I need you to help me sell my team." And I said, "Yeah, I'm good. I got a great job at the Jazz. I'm running the Delta Center. Love what I'm doing." He's like, "Well, I'd really like you to help me. Who do I need to talk to?" I said, "Well, you'd have to talk to the Millers, but I'm really happy with what I'm doing." And sorry, he said, well, let me call you back. I'll call you back in a couple hours. And I said, well, okay. He called me back and he said, John, I struck a deal. They're going to loan you to me for 3 months and you're going to help me sell my team. And then you'll go back to the Jazz and it'll all work. It'll all be great. And I was like, what? So that's how I came back 3 years ago.
You got drafted, man. That's
I got
crazy.
drafted and it was an honor to work with him. And it was crazy to, be a part of selling the team and meeting, you know, companies and people that were interested in the club and, essentially selling a club and going through that exercise. It stretched me and made me grow more than I think I've ever grown in my career. And then I was, once the Blitzer group and the Smith group came on board, to be offered the role to be the president was again really an honor. But yeah, my job changes every single day, quite honestly. I don't know that I do the same thing, any day. And that's what I love about it. We got a lot of really good people. It's exciting to have the Royals back and Michelle Heinzek as the president and work with her. We've got some work to do, obviously, but it's an expansion club, and for anybody to expect much from an expansion team is a little bit crazy. But we've got a great state for women's sports, with BYU and the U and other clubs that we have that are nationally recognized. It's just awesome to be doing what we're doing and have an ownership group that supports us the way they support us.
Hey,
So
John,
obviously the sale took longer than 3 months. No, so I'm assuming you're not still on loan. You got the full-time job. Was there
Yeah.
anything in that time period that maybe stories that haven't been sold about uh, how difficult it was it difficult to find that perfect or a fit to get the Blitzer group in and Ryan Smith? I mean, there had to have been more than just them looking for the club. Was it a difficult process?
It was difficult in the sense that there were a number of parties that were interested. Um, and it was exciting to see how it came together because I would argue we got the best ownership in the league. Having a local owner like Ryan Smith, who's here and present, and then to have David Blitzer, who is literally buying the planet of sports and owns a number of teams in all leagues, and to have his support and what he's doing in Europe. It's just the perfect match because we have that global support through David Blitzer, and then we have the local support through Ryan Smith. And yeah, a lot of interesting things happened. A lot of interesting people approached us. And I think we just ended up with just the best scenario that we could have possibly gotten.
nobody that didn't show up in the news.
Yeah, quite honestly, a number of people that didn't show up in the news.
Still
And
disclose those.
yeah, I would rather not. You never know what happens, but really substantial, great people and people that are famous in Utah, famous families that have done well in business, that were really interested about our club and wanted to make sure to keep it in Utah. And like I said, the people that we ended up with, it just couldn't have been a better situation. So
Was Dave Checketts involved with any of that? Are you trying to get uh, Uncle Dave to get the team back? I think he was still serving a mission at the time, though.
yeah, and he was fully engaged with his task of being a mission president. So he wasn't as involved as I'm sure he would have loved to have been because he gave his heart and soul for this club, and we owe him an awful lot. Um, but because he is a man of character, he was doing what he needed to do on his LDS mission. But it's fun to have him come back and see what he built originally.
So moving forward, we have the we're on the best start of any RSL team in history. A little surprising to maybe some of us who weren't as optimistic to start. I was expecting them to be struggle a little bit and pick up during the season, but they proved me wrong and just kind of have tore out of the gate there. But there are some questions. Uh, Chicho Arango is amazing, but what happens if he's not able to play consistently? Knock on wood. There's some place spots that RSL could probably pick up some depth in maybe the transfer windows. What are the thoughts on building the team moving forward?
That's something that we obviously are working on, and that's what Jason and Kurt and Tony are focused on. But we're also focused on, like what I said earlier, is making sure that our younger athletes get a chance to get in and get the time. I mean, to see Gozo go in at the end of that game, I mean, he's going to be a factor in the future. We got Fidel, we've got Luna, we've got these players that are wicked awesome. And back to last year, we struggled because we're a young team. And when you go up against Houston, that are veterans, it was just our inexperience. And now, because of the playing time that these players are getting, that's why they're effective, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. So I think we got the best of both worlds. We got an ownership group that's interested in seeing us succeed. They've shown that they're not afraid to pay, to pay some money to do it. I think last year, other than Miami, we were one of the highest teams that was spending money to make our team successful. So they'll do what they need to do to ensure success. And again, knock on wood, Chicho's going to be healthy all the way through this season. But the great news is we've got people to back him up and to help him. And and yes, I'd say, we're looking at every option that we can that's reasonable. We're not going to be that club that just goes and buys players. We're going to buy players like Chicho that may be under the radar, but make us effective. And then we're also going to play young players so that they become veterans. I mean, look what Luna's doing already. It's amazing to see his ability and his growth. And he wouldn't have got that, probably any other place because, I think we had like 3 teenagers on the field last game. How often does that happen in the league? And we're doing that to ensure our future because if we can make them veterans by 20 years old, that's going to ensure our future for sure.
Yeah, I know we seems to be moving into the league is moving into almost hopefully not too much of an arms race, but it is kind of starting to heat up, especially with it's kind of leaning heavy on the Miami side with all the players they're amazingly able to bring in. But you got LAFC on our side who's nipping at our heels, who is bringing in Olivier Giroud or however say his name. That's an amazing player from
Giroud.
France, Giroud. Just an amazing player. So there are teams around us that are always going to spend more than us, and I love the way RSL uh, is going about their business. But how much of a free reign does the club have if something pops up? We have the ability to have 2 DP signings if we uh, pay down a couple players. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the specifics of that, and I heard them analyzing that, but I think to your point, if some things happen, then there is that possibility. We certainly have one. Um, but again, our club's not going to do anything irresponsible, and we proved in 2009 that you can win a national championship with being one of the smallest paying clubs in the country. So we're not going to probably be on that side of the fence. We're also not going to be on the side of trying to buy big players, and because I don't think that effectively creates the culture that we want to have, which is, like I said, we want to invest in our young athletes. We want to give them a future. We want to give them time on the field, but we also want to have key pieces of, putting flags in the ground like Chicho that these young players can play around and become really solid players because they're playing with some of the best players in the world. So while we won't ever do what Miami's doing, we're going to do what we're doing, which is being the most, I don't know, feared club to play. Nobody likes to play us because nobody knows what's going to happen with us, because we have those players that, you know, are going to step up and get those chances. And like I said earlier, we're deep and we're wide, because we are playing younger players and we are willing to invest intelligently in players like Chicho. So what we will do is something that's very responsible. I think a lot of fans want us to go find big, expensive players. It's just not going to happen with us. We're going to be responsible about how we do it. Now, I will say Chicho was a big, expensive player, but he was a key piece that we needed to build around. We needed that piece, and Kurt and our soccer ops team did all the research they needed to do to make sure we got that key piece. And with having another DP opportunity available, if not two, you know, they're going to be really thoughtful about what they do with that.
Some of those big players just are not going to be happy playing in Utah.
No, and that is a key piece, and that's one of the things that Jason Christ brought to our club, and has really, working with Kurt, brought back to our club. That's a key part of our interview process. Is they've got to fit our club before we would ever waste our time bringing in a player that wants to, you know, go to Vegas every weekend. It's just not who we are. And, you know, I think we and the Jazz kind of focus on making sure, certainly I know we do, they got to fit our club. They got to want to be part of our culture. They want to be a part of our community. You know, and the players that we have, they absolutely love being here. Some of them at first struggle, and it's a little bit of an adjustment. As we all know, this is a different place to be, but ultimately, you know, our players really enjoy living here and raising families here. You know, again, Nick Raimondo has built his family and his business and his life here. So is Kyle Beckerman. Now Jason Christ is back, and quite honestly wished he never left, but went out and did some cool things, but is now contributing. And it's just fun to see people, you know, really see Utah for what I know it is. I'm born and raised, and you know, but it takes a unique person to want to be here, and not all players are going to fit here. And we don't want anybody that doesn't want to be here, and we'll vet that out very quickly and try to do that before we bring them.
John, we've had a lot of homegrown players. I'm such a big fan of kids that grew up in the state, played some, you know, West Valley ball, as I like to call it, you know, played in some drainage ponds as a kid, you know, kicked the ball around there and kind of learned it from the streets of Utah, which again, that's not like the streets of Argentina, but you know, that kind of a gritty gozo kind of a, you know, even though, you know, a couple guys grew up in Park City or Farmington,
Yeah,
maybe it's a little higher end, but still the Utah kids, you know, like bringing those in, has that been a point of emphasis?
absolutely. You know, we want every kid in Utah to really believe that they have a chance to play professional soccer. And, you know, we've got the Booth boys. We had, you know, one of the Booth boys at the game on Saturday. And, you know, it's pretty cool to see kids like that go on and do something spectacular. But my argument is when World Cup hits and we have that phenomenon happen, or that tipping point, that there's going to be 10-year-old kids in the United States. I mean, you know, I say this and I know I offend soccer fans and soccer players, but our best American athletes don't play soccer. You know, if we had LeBron James standing in goal, it'd be a different factor. And, you know, once we get the NFL wide receivers to start playing soccer, and we get these 10-year-old kids that are going to see this World Cup and they say, I want to play soccer, that's when we start winning World Cups as a country. And that is exactly what's going to happen, in my opinion. There's going to be kids that watch that World Cup in 2026, and they're going to say, I want to play this game. And once our best athletes start playing this game, we start winning World Cups. So I'll predict in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be contenders because of the World Cup coming to the United States. And these kids saying that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I want to be a part of that. And that's where this league has grown from the last World Cup when the league started in 94. And look where we are now, and look where it's going to go. And, we all know that Americans love to dominate and we want to be the best in the world at everything we do. That's what's going to happen from this, World Cup happening in 2026. And I think in 10 years, you're going to see the United States, be in the top 5, teams in the world.
Awesome.
Fully agree with
Yeah. And speaking about, Major League Soccer, what's your thoughts on promotion and relegation? Is that ever possible? I personally think it could be, but I don't think we have the infrastructure near, or is MLS just going to expand into 40 teams and then split into two, or do you have any thoughts on that? Or is that, I'm sure that comes up all the time. It does on the internets.
Yeah, it certainly is something that is discussed. But I think the phenomenon of what I just talked about needs to happen first, before I really think that's going to be a serious consideration. Um, but you never know, you just never know. There is, there's conversation about that. That I know happens, and that would change, certainly for us being a Utah team and the European schedule and all that, that would really affect us. And I think our league, our club would just have to be at a whole different level for that to be, I think an intelligent decision for the league to make. But there's certainly people smarter than I and get paid a lot more than I do that are thinking about those decisions.
So, we appreciate you spending some time with us, but I was just curious, do you have any favorite memories of your first stints with RSL? Was winning the cup? Is there anything through that first period with the club that really stands out that is a fond memory, maybe a couple?
Yeah, I'll tell you, next to the birth of my children, that 2009 national championship is right up there. I'll never forget being in Seattle and seeing Robbie, drill that ball in the net, seeing Landon Donovan sky one over the crossbar. Um, you know, and quite honestly, one of the Beckham stories that wasn't told was him coming into our locker room post game and shaking everybody's hand. I mean, he truly is, an exceptional person. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him for a couple of reasons. One of them was because of him doing that, and another one was when Real Madrid came to play. I mean, that was an amazing. I had no idea the scope of that. Not really being as educated about the game and back then, and even now, who they were. They walked off a private plane, all dressed in suits and ties, rolled into the Grand America. I shook David's hand, having no real concept of. I mean, I just watched that movie and was just blown away at what he'd been through as a human being. And can you imagine, just the mental, just drama that he went through to go to be what he ended up being and what he accomplished. But I'll never forget a story where um he was asked by our organization to spend time with a Make-A-Wish kid, and I was standing in the tunnel when he came down the tunnel to get this kid. And I'll never forget, his publicist turned to us and said, okay, now David has just a couple of minutes to spend with this kid. And I was like, really? Because I was thinking David Beckham, he's a beautiful man. He's got all these tattoos. I mean, who is this clown? I don't care. I miss the sports gene. I wouldn't walk across the street to get anybody's autograph, and I certainly didn't really care that David Beckham was there. But I knew he was a big deal, and he came walking down the tunnel, and the publicist said that to us, and I was like, really, that's a shame. Here's this kid that was dying of cancer, and David came down and he grabbed this kid's hand and he turned around and he said to the publicist, he said, "I'll tell you when I'm done." And he walked out onto Rice Eccles and played kick with this kid for 20, 30 minutes. And the kid was exhausted. And David said, "Are you good?" And the kid said, "This is the time of my life." He brought the kid back to his family. And I was like, there's a man. There's an athlete. There's somebody that really gets it because he made a difference. And, from that point, I was just like, he's my favorite athlete of any sport because he won me over with just, being, different than a lot of athletes that I've seen in my career. So that was a really cool memory for me as well.
Wow, I
Fantastic
don't think I've
story. I haven't
heard
heard
that.
that one.
Yeah, I haven't heard that story. That's pretty awesome. Thanks for sharing that with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely.
And now that you're back, a couple questions. Any favorite memories so far in your time? It's been quite the ride the last few years, but do you have any favorite memories so far from your recent stint as leader of the Claret and Cobalt?
It was really pretty cool when we didn't have an owner and I was reporting into Don Garber in the league, to make it as far as we made it, in the playoffs with Pablo. I mean, we communicate and just say, "How you doing?" And he was like, "We're doing good." And it was fun to just, do what we did because we just really wanted to excel. We wanted to do something for our fan base, and we wanted to show who we really were as a club. And we didn't, we weren't doing it in spite of anybody. We just really truly believed in what we were doing, and that was fun. And then it was awesome, when the ownership was announced and to see the excitement. And quite honestly, I think our very best memories are coming. And I think we've got a special team this year. We got a special coaching staff, and we've got an amazing ownership group that is stepping up and wants to see us succeed. And so I really do think a lot of the coolest things are going to happen here in the next couple of years.
So how do you do that? I mean, when RSL came into the league in 2005, it was a totally different league, 8 teams. Now we're pushing over 30, getting close to 30. How are we going to be, or how are you? We're going to be there in the stands, but how is RSL going to recreate or be relevant in a much larger, stronger league?
It goes down to processes. It goes down to protocol. It goes down to, accountability and people knowing what their job is. And we had a lot of work over the off season to talk about what it means to have one-on-ones with people, the coaching staff to have one-on-ones with players to make sure. I mean, just the other day, Scott McLaughlin asked Pablo, "What's been the contributing factor? What's changed? Why are things, working the way they're working?" And Pablo talked about the meetings that we hold, talked about how we get in a room and there's discussion. And Nick mentioned to me today, I asked him, I said, what do you think is really cool about what's happening now? He said, as a goalie coach, I can give feedback and I'm being heard. And we get in rooms after the game and everybody contributes their opinions and talks about what we're doing to be successful. And I think it's that process, those protocols, the one-on-ones, the department meetings, the fact that people are being heard and respected, is what's making the difference on the field. You know, we're letting Chicho be a captain, and he's leading in the locker room. We're cleaning up, you know, some of the stuff that we needed to clean up with players and coaches and different things that may have happened in the past. And it's just a culture where people feel heard and they feel respected and they want to do something special. And I think it's that process that when you pay attention to the details and the work that needs to happen, because nothing comes easy. I mean, you know, fans think you can go buy players and win things. You might be able to do that, but it won't be sustaining. It won't last. It'll be a flash in the pan. What we're building is something that's going to last for years. And it's because of the process, the attention to detail, the work that's going in, and the support that we get. And that's why that's why I pinch myself, because to be a part of that and to see that hard work be rewarded with fans coming out and going bananas, and to see us just wreck teams, you know, because we're just stepping on people's throats because we know we can. That is the reward of hard work. That is the reward of attention to detail. That is the reward of being heard and being part of a culture that cares and has respect. It goes back to the RSL way. It goes back to our community. It goes back to honor and integrity and all the things that we truly believe in as a club. Those things are now being executed and are part of our daily process. And when you do stuff, you know, that's something for this new generation. When you pay attention to detail and hard work, results happen and amazing things happen. Hard work results in success. And that's what our club is showing now. And like I said, you know, things could change, things could go off the rails, you know, you never know, but I doubt it. I sincerely doubt it because of all the hard work and the processes that are in place to ensure our success.
That's awesome. As a fan, you know, I don't expect my clubs. I have two that I follow with the emotion. I don't expect them to win the title every year, but I would much rather have a team that is consistent in what they know what they want to do and be competitive every year with the, you know, if things break their right way, they are a contender. I look at like New England Patriots and the run they had for 2 decades, and they did have the greatest quarterback of all time, but they also had a culture that was exactly like you said. Hopefully, that's what RSL is trying to create in an MLS side.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I'll tell you the third thing that bugs me about soccer is how negative the fans get on social media. I mean,
Right.
we got to have people that want to believe, you know, as opposed to people that just rip our coach and rip our players. I mean, who are you really? If you're going to get on and just rip on people and be negative, go be a fan of somebody else, you know, because we know what we need to do. We already feel bad about it. You know, we're not stupid. We're not sitting there not paying attention to what happened in the game. People are human. They make mistakes. You know, you look what Zach McMath did and some of the mistakes he made, and then what the man he is to step up post game and step in front of the camera and take the interview. He asked to take the interview post game after he'd made mistakes because he wanted to be accountable. That, I mean, if that's not an example of what our youth needs to look at, because guess what? Everybody's going to make mistakes. And Zach made mistakes and he said, "Give me the microphone. I want to own what I did. My team, my teammates deserve better." And he wanted to step in front of everybody and say, "Hey, I made some mistakes and I'm human, but I want to step up and I want to, you know, own what I did." And I can't tell you how much more I respect him for doing that than, you know, stopping 15 goals. I'd rather have him step up the way he stepped up after making those mistakes, because that's what teaches people things. That's what teaches, you know, young soccer players that, hey, you know what? I was a goalie. I'd made mistakes all the time. But, you know, to have him step up like that, I just was so impressed with him as a human. And those are the type of players that we have now, which is it's just amazing to see these guys as leaders and wanting to be accountable and step up for their teammates and their coaches and their, their families and their communities. I mean, that's what I think this is all about. I love the human stories about these players as opposed to, and just what you said, Brant. I mean, we're in the playoffs every freaking year. I mean, that says something about who we are and what we want to do. We almost had Messi here for the US Open Cup, but we were a younger team than Houston. They were just veterans that just knew how to beat us. And we had no business being in the finals at that point, but yet we were, and we were playing really well. And I think any fan that wants to rip on us for those things, I mean, go be a fan of somebody else, because we got some really special guys that are going to do special things, and we need support. Again, we need our fans to step up and vote for our players because they're doing something exceptional right now that doesn't happen in a community very often. And if we got fans that want to get behind us and get on board, that's what we need, because that's what's going to help us do something really cool.
To that point. That was kind of one of the reasons we decided to start a podcast. Um, we're not going to lie and say that we haven't been critical, but also we wanted to be able to have a conversation about the game, win or lose, in a positive fashion. We're
And
not.
that's
I
I
don't think
have so much respect for what you guys are doing because that's what we need. We're not afraid to take criticism. We know when we make mistakes, but it's when people personally attack and just say mean things. I mean, come on. That's this whole new world we live in, and I get it, but and I don't pay much attention to it anymore because it just irritates me. But I'd love to
see
see
that.
people get on board and be supportive because that's what we honestly had back in 2009. We had a fan base that just believed in their boys. They just wanted to see people win, and they were supportive, and we were not winning. And then all of a sudden, we come home with a championship trophy, and it was a really special time to be a fan and to be a part of the club.
Yeah, I
I
think
was,
John.
I was at the airport. Go ahead, Tyler.
Oh,
Nice.
no, so kind of going back to what you said about process, accountability, and feedback it sounds like seeking feedback is a big part of that as well, not just from the players, but from coaches, ownership, everybody that's there, kind of seeking feedback so they can improve, and every part of the game can improve throughout the club. Is that part of what you're doing as well?
Yeah, and that's what's so amazing about Pablo is that he is such a student of the game, but he knows he's got so much to learn, and he is just so open to feedback and working with the players and just being in touch with what we need to do to get better. I mean, it's rare to have a coach that it leads that way and has so much respect from his players because they know that they got a coach that is willing to adjust and listen to what they have to say, and that's why you see just amazing things happen on the field because we have a coach and a coaching staff. There were some big adjustments. Pablo spoke to that. We had to excuse his whole assistant coaching group, and he is such an amazing human being that he was grateful for that experience because while that was really probably the most painful thing he's probably ever done or had to be involved with, now he sees the results of what our ownership group knew could happen if he brought in another group that would give him feedback and not say, oh, whatever you think, coach, you're the smartest guy in the room. He's listening to what these other coaches have to say, and they have different opinions. And that is a part of what has made this team so special because all these guys are, saying things that normally maybe other people wouldn't say. And just, like Nick said today at lunch, and Nick is the GOAT, and he, wants to give feedback, but maybe in the past didn't feel like he could, and now he can, and feels like he's respected and that they want to hear his opinion and his voice. And that's what makes a club special and a team special, because then you got all these people rowing in the same direction. And that's what makes something very powerful.
And kind of on that same note, like as the club's kind of heading and rowing in the same direction, I know a lot of NBA franchises are starting to kind of branch out into the real estate market. Mark Cuban sold his big piece of the Mavericks because he's not in that game. Is that something that Real has a kind of a plan for? Are they buying that old nursery place? Is that part of the stadium infrastructure project? Anything you can share around that?
I can't really share much about that other than, again, our ownership is they want to make their mark. And you see what Ryan Smith's doing and the expansion that he's doing. And our ownership wants to do awesome things for our club so that, fans that come feel like they're part of something that's exciting. And they want to, make sure that they feel like, that they're investing in a building and in a community that they're proud of. You've seen a lot of changes, a lot of color, a lot of things that, needed to happen. And our ownership group is excited about, doing things that they know are going to keep our fans really excited about being a part of our club.
Nice.
Your
How will
question about the
the
team store?
Oh no, I asked him earlier about the team store.
The team star.
Yeah, but did we talk about it before? There was some changes. You might as well bring it up for the podcast. Changes in the team store. We moved to Fanatics. Will the team store still have some flexibility in creating independent or RSL specific items
Designs.
designs?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things, and I shared this guy with you guys earlier, and I'm not worried about sharing it with you now. That was one of the stipulations that I made, is that there still has to be a local feel. I still have to be able to work with people like Brandon Steinecker and create some of the really cool stuff that we create. And Fanatics was wide open to that and actually excited about it. And I'm always open to fans that want to bring ideas to us that they think they can get behind, because I love on game day and the day before game day wearing gear and having people say, I mean, I was wearing, I went to a shop the other day and I had my kind of crazy Hawaiian Real Salt Lake shirt on that I got at the team store that's not, the traditional by the code stuff that you would normally see people wear. And somebody was like, "Oh my gosh, did you see that game? And were you there?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was there." And we geeked out for a second, but it was because I was wearing gear. And I love wearing gear because I'm proud of this club and I want people talking about it. I want people to come to the games. And it's awesome when we're 20 plus thousand people strong. That's another thing I'll bring up about our fan base. We've got to figure out a way to get chants going collectively, and I need your guys' help, because you go to Portland and it's a factor. And you come to our building and every now and again we'll get something going, but we just got to do a better job about coming together as a fan base and getting, let's just beyond the believe chant, which is awesome. Can we get one more chant, just one more chant that we can all sing together? Because that just creates an atmosphere that's just amazing, and we just tend to struggle. So I'd love to see our fan base come together and just collectively say, "Hey, let's do this at the 45th minute or the 92nd minute or whatever," but just something that shows our collective power, because it's really cool when sitting at home and you hear that coming through the speakers, when a fan base and players. Landon Donovan, and I think I can say this, he interviewed for our head coach position. And he said that he would come off the field and catch himself later at the airport singing our Believe chant, because it's stuck in his head and he hated it. He hated that he'd be whistling, you know, believe because it just, is a catchy tune. But that's something that's unique to us and gets in players' heads. And if we want to be a fan base that gets in players' heads, that's the most successful way to do it instead of trying to attack them or rip on them. So that would be a request I'd make other than voting for our all-star players.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I think Tyler spent a lot of time in the South End. I haven't spent time in the South End, but I know that the thought process is allowing things to grow organically.
Of course.
And some of those other clubs, I don't know that they have um, so many as many supporter clubs as we do. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. So I wonder, what does the club do to coordinate with all of the great clubs over there in the South End, supporter clubs?
We have really worked with them and tried to make suggestions, but you hit it on the head. It has to be organic. It has to come from the fans. That's where Believe came from. I worked with Brandon, and he came up with that chant and played it for me. And I said, because it's coming from you, I'll give it as much support as I can. He wrote another one, the war chant that we play as the players walk out and then right at halftime. I'd love to hear that chant sung sometime during the game by the fans, not through the loudspeaker, but by the
Right.
fans. And he created another one for the fans, and the fans just haven't picked it up yet. It's there for you, but I'm not going to try to force it on you. But Brandon wrote it for the fans, and it's still, is something we're playing through the speakers. And I don't know that anybody's singing along, but it would be cool if the fan base said, hey, let's, when we need a shot in the arm, let's sing the war song. And it's Spanish and English. That's part of the issue that we have is the disconnect of languages and coming together and seeing something that is maybe Spanish or but then also English, and that's why Brandon wrote that chant. He gave it to me and said, John, here it is. It's in both languages, so let's go. And I'm like, hey, I'll support it. We'll play it as the players walk out. Again, I just need the fans to say, hey, that'd be cool. Let's give something back to the club. Let's give something to our players, and let's come together and sing this chant. It's been gifted to us, so let's go. But you're right; it has to be organic. Can't come from the club. I can't force it on people, but it is a factor. Landon Donovan said it was, and we just need to figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah, I like the halftime with the phones out, the
Yeah,
lights down, the red everywhere.
yeah,
That's pretty fierce. I like that too. That's pretty awesome.
yeah.
Little things like that, I think, make the game experience a little bit better for each fan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But we want our fan clubs to do it organically because that's when it's meaningful.
That's when it can definitely grow.
Yep.
Well, John, we cannot thank you enough for joining us and sharing all this top secret info with us about the future. You're doing an amazing job, and we absolutely love the turn that RSL has made in the last few years. I mean, Deloitte did a lot of great things, but it seemed like there was something that was lost during that time for whatever reason, and it looks like it's been found, especially this season. We're glad to have it back.
Well, thank you. And I'll tell you, it's an evolution because it took all those tough years to kind of learn what we needed to learn. And, I think, all of the owners have contributed to where we are now. And we are going to be a factor in the future. And it's just exciting to be a part of something. And I'm a very small part of an amazing group of people that really care about this club and about our community. And it's just a fun thing to be a part of. And just want to say thanks to you guys for caring and for all the support you give and for being passionate about our club. And it means the world to me to know that there's people out there that really want to be involved and push this club and this sport, to just an amazing height. And I'm telling you, World Cup's going to be insane. So just hang on.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
All right, take care, you guys.
Thank you, John.